some people call it a hybrid war. I would call it hybrid war as well.
The United States is at war with Russia. This is not something that I'm telling you. This is something that Lavrov said to Tucker Carlson. They recently had an interview, and the full-length interview will be linked down below. They recently had an interview where he expressed these things. We are at war with each other, the United States and Russia, but they call it a hybrid war. We're going to be going over the most important points in this interview. We cannot go over all of it, but I will be showing you the most important topics because I think these things are going to be looked at as propaganda, as the Russian Foreign Affairs has already posted it on their YouTube, and anything that they post is certainly going to be looked at as propaganda. Now, it's important to understand that there's actually Western news medias, there's now Western content creators who are talking about this conflict more openly. It seems like Tucker Carlson has opened the door for more people to report on this with not such a bias against Russia. They are more in the center and they're just saying things as they are. We will be looking at that kind of stuff later, but now let's get into the first topic of this entire interview. We're going to be looking at the first question that is asked to Lavrov, and it actually starts really good. It goes straight to the point.
Minister Lavrov, thank you for doing this. Do you believe the United States and Russia are at war with each other right now?
I wouldn't say so, and in any case, this is not what we want. We would like to have normal relations with all our neighbors, of course, but generally with all countries or not, especially with the great country like the United States. President Putin repeatedly expressed his respect for the American people, for the American history, for the American achievements in the world, and we don't see any reason why Russia and the United States cannot cooperate for the sake of the universe.
But the United States is funding a conflict that you're involved in, of course, and now is allowing attacks on Russia itself. So that doesn't constitute war?
This question here, where he's going to answer, it's a follow-up question, because the first answer that Lavrov gave was, by the way, we're not at war. We want no trouble with the United States. The president of the Russian Federation actually speaks highly of the United States. Even he mentions that it would benefit the entire world if these countries had no conflict and actually worked together. So in the beginning of the question, it's very simple for him to say, no, actually, this is not a problem. There's nothing between our countries. But then Tucker Carlson digs deeper. Obviously, we know that the United States has been arming the Ukrainians, so he kind of instigates him. He pushes them. Hey, by the way, you know this is happening. Tell us, are we really at war? And I believe that this next answer is going to be the more important answer, the one that we actually should be listening to, because we don't want this to escalate further. So let's get a look at what his full answer is here. After he's asked, by the way, this is happening, what do you feel then?
We officially are not at war. But what is going on in Ukraine is some people call it a hybrid war. I would call it hybrid war as well. But it is obvious that the Ukrainians would not be able to do what they're doing with long-range modern weapons without direct participation of the American servicemen. And this is dangerous, no doubt about this. We don't want to aggravate the situation, but since ATACMS and other long-range weapons are being used against mainland Russia, as it were, we are sending signals, and we hope that the last one, a couple of weeks ago, the signal with the new weapon system called Oreshnik,
yes,
was taken seriously.
We'll stop it there. That is the major point of the first topic that I wanted to talk about. This major point where, by the way, they want to be taken seriously. It just happens so that in Russia, they've had many opportunities to tell the West, hey, we're not trying to be number one, but we are trying to be taken seriously. This is what Russia's been asking for. Now, interestingly enough, as well, before the Russians tested this new weapon in war, the news were just talking about how the United States was arming Ukraine with long-range missiles, and this was happening all over the United States on all news stations. How strange is it, right? How strange is it that a country is just feeding this information to their citizens, and their citizens are doing nothing about it? I am, of course, a war veteran myself, and I would not want to end up in a trench again. I fought in trenches in Afghanistan, and I don't want to be in trenches somewhere in Europe. I don't think that it should get to this. So Lavrov is actually just saying, by the way, we are in an indirect war. He calls it a hybrid war. They call it a hybrid war. I'm not sure why they would change the name from from proxy war to hybrid war. Ever since the end of the collapse of the Soviet Union, there's been random proxy wars all around the world. Even before the Soviet Union collapsed, there was already proxy wars happening against both sides. So Lavrov is clarifying that yes, there is a hybrid war amongst our countries, but the Russian government does not want it to escalate further, even though they know there is Western people essentially arming and firing the weapons that are hitting Russia. Because the Ukrainians, these people are not trained in any way to actually use these weapons, right? You cannot learn to use these weapons effectively in the amount of time that the Ukrainians have been given. And that is a whole nother topic in itself, but the Ukrainians are basically caught in the middle here. They are just, unfortunately, the ones that have to be used for this proxy war. And this is why this conflict is not really between Ukraine and Russia. It's actually the hybrid war, as Lavrov calls it, against Russia and the United States. And I also want to make it very clear, for all of those crazy doomsday people who are crying that, oh, America is at war with Russia. I mean, this is a proxy war. America and Russia and then the Soviet Union were in proxy wars against each other for a long time. We have to thank God that we are not in direct war. There's a huge difference between a proxy or hybrid war and a total war amongst countries. A declaration of war between these two countries would be catastrophic. I guarantee you that many of you who have never been to war do not understand the difference and would cry about this conflict where it is now, but we should be thankful that we are not in actual direct war amongst the two countries. So now let's move on to the next important topic that came from this interview. This next topic is one of the most important topics because it deals with sanctions. Anybody who's thinking about coming to Russia, you have to understand that we here, the people that are living in Russia, no matter if you're Russian or not Russian, we are living under sanctions. This next bit, Tucker Carlson asks him, hey, would a peace agreement involve Russia asking for the sanctions to go away? Is this something that you guys would ask for? If there were to be peace, would sanctions be something that you're interested in taking away? And this is what Lavrov had to say. You know, a lot of YouTubers were talking about sanctions for like the first year or two on YouTube when this conflict started. And well, this is what Lavrov has to say about taking sanctions away.
To pay attention to this in a very special way.
Would dropping sanctions against Russia be a condition?
I would say probably many people in Russia would like to make it a condition, but the more we live under sanctions, the more we understand that it is better to rely on yourself and to develop mechanisms, to develop platforms for cooperation with normal countries who are not unfriendly to you and don't mix economic interest and policies, and especially politics. And we learned a lot after the sanctions started. Sanctions started under Obama. They continued in a very big way under the first term of Trump. And these sanctions under the Biden administration are absolutely unprecedented but what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, you know. And
Well, but
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That is essentially the summary of his answer. And by the way, a lot of people were expecting him to say, yes, yes, please drop sanctions, make that a proposal to the West if the conflict is to end. But Lavrov and I guess the Russian government is not willing to allow the West to use that as leverage, because the Russian government, the Russian society has now kind of molded itself to counter sanctions. He said it himself. Sanctions started in 2014 when the crisis in Crimea happened. That whole episode triggered the sanctions to begin under the Obama administration, then continued under the Trump administration. And then he said, well, during the Biden administration, they were unprecedented amount of sanctions and how strong they were. But the people in Russia, I mean, I lived here since 2022. It was pretty rough in 2022. I am not Russian. I cannot speak for the Russian people, but it was actually very difficult for me as a foreigner because of different things that I will not mention now. But if it was hard for me, it was definitely hard for the Russians. I know there was many videos about, oh, we still have Coca-Cola. That's ridiculous. Oh, we still have food in the markets. That's ridiculous. That's not what sanctions were made out to hurt. So Lavrov clarifies that the sanctions will not be allowed to be used against Russia as leverage. So this is a very important topic. If you plan on coming to Russia and think that the conflict, once it ends, will ease sanctions, do not bet on it. And if they do, well, then it's just a plus. Let's move on to the next important topic. And this next topic, I think, is also very important because Russia, since the beginning of the conflict, has been pushed towards China more than ever. But it's a historical thing that's been happening. Russia's been pushed and pushed towards the east. Russia wanted to join NATO at one point and it was denied. And they tried again, I believe, and it was denied. They didn't even want to talk about it. So Russia, being a natural neighbor with China, has a huge border with China. Tucker Carlson again says, by the way, is this going to be permanent? Is this going to be forever? Are you always going to be friends with China? And this is what Lavrov had to say. I think he handles it brilliantly.
still very much.
But it is the way that big countries behave. I mean, there are certain orbits, and now it's BRICS versus NATO, US versus China. And it sounds like you're saying the Russian-Chinese alliance is permanent.
Well, we are neighbors. We are neighbors, and geography is very important.
But you're also neighbors with Western Europe. You're part of it, in effect.
Well, through Ukraine, and the Western Europe wants to come to our borders. And there were plans that, were discussed almost openly to put British naval bases on the Sea of Azov. Crimea was eyed, dreaming about creating NATO base in Crimea, and so on and so forth. We want to, look, we have been very friendly with Finland, for example. Overnight, the Finns came back to early years of preparation for World War II, when they were best allies of Hitler, and all this neutrality, all this friendship, going to sauna together, playing hockey together, all this disappeared overnight. So maybe this was deep in their hearts, and the neutrality was burdening them, and niceties were burdening for them. I don't know.
That's totally possible. Can you negotiate with Zelensky? You've pointed out that he has exceeded his term. He's not,
Well, we're not going to get it more into the conflict portion, but you can see he's very honest about it. He's letting him know, he's letting Tucker know, by the way, there are our neighbors, and we also have other neighbors that were friendly and then randomly flipped the switch. Of course, Russia did have the winter war with Finland, but Finland was a natural ally of the Nazi Germans, and it has, some history with that faction, just like the Ukrainians have a history with that faction. I'm not saying that Russia is pure and clean of any crimes, right, during the Second World War, because they did invade Poland. They had the whole pact with the Germans as well. But the bottom line is, right now in recent history, the Russia that we know today is not an ally of China because it is the best option, but it is probably allies with China only because it's neighbors, because it did want to come to the West. And many people now are barely learning about this actual point, and it's just a shame because, like Tucker said, Russia is part of the West, whether they want to agree with it or not. A lot of Russians talk about like, oh, it's the Western countries. No, guys. You know, Moscow and St. Petersburg are Western cities. They are the largest. I mean, Moscow is the largest city in Europe. It is the most populated city in Europe. Russia is the most populated country in Europe. Russia is part of the West. It is unfortunate that this is happening now, but the reality is that China has least in common with Russia than it does Russia with the West. Russia and the West have more in common than Russia and China, and therefore they should be natural friends. He said that the Finnish were in the sauna and playing hockey, and they're really tied culturally with the Russian people. Culturally, these Nordic countries are very, very similar to the Russians because of weather and a lot of their traditions. Now, I want to finish this video off with showing you what Lavrov has to say about Trump, because Trump is the next president of the United States, and it's very important to see what high-ranking officials and maybe the president of Russia have, what kind of opinions they have on the next president of the United States.
What do you think of Donald Trump?
I met him several times when he was having meetings with Putin, and when he received me twice, I think, in the Oval Office when I was visiting for bilateral talks. Well, I think he's a very strong person, a person who wants results, who doesn't like procrastination on anything. And this is my impression. He's very friendly in discussions, and but this does not mean that that he is pro-Russian, as some people try to present him. The amount of sanctions we received under the Trump administration was very, very, very big. And we respect any choice which is made by the people when they vote. And we respect the choice of American people, and we are open, as Putin said, we are open to contacts with, we have been open all along with the current administration. And we hope that when Donald Trump is inaugurated, we will understand what the ball, as Putin said, is on this side. We never severed our contacts, our ties in economy, trade, on security, on anything.
And the end of that part is him saying that the ball is in the United States court. However they want to play the game, Russia's ready, because Russia never severed any ties with them in any way. Now, I liked how he started answering the question saying, the way they see him is that he likes results, right? He's not a bad guy. He just likes results, and in person he seems to be friendly. And one thing that I really, really enjoyed is that Lavrov is essentially letting everybody know then and there that why would they think that this guy's working for the Russians? Trump has been accused of working for the Russians by the American people back in the United States by a political party, and that turned out to be fake. But somehow people still think that because he's friends with the Russian people, or the Russian government. By friends, I mean that when he was president, he did not want conflict, unnecessary conflict. And this is, in the eyes of other people, a bad thing. right? You know, Donald Trump went over there to North Korea, shook hands, walked into North Korea. He was thought to be the guy that's going to start World War III, and little did we know it was going to be Joe Biden, right? But all of these things that Lavrov is saying is that he seems to be a normal guy. The ball is on their court. When Donald Trump becomes president, he can play the game however he wants, but Russia's going to be ready for it. We are not willing to cut any ties with them. If they want to reopen negotiations for economic trades and all of these things, it's going to be there because Russia never cut them. Now, to end this video, this is probably one of the more important sections because I told you there are bigger channels who are openly talking about why this conflict even started. This is just a little segment that I'm going to play, but you're going to be able to find this in a link down below. And in my opinion, it is one of the more larger channels. It's Valor Entertainment, and here it is.
Niet. Russia's NATO enlargement red lines. In this document, the current CIA director, former ambassador to Russia, he conveyed Russia's strong opposition to NATO's eastward expansion, particularly regarding Ukraine and Georgia. He highlighted that Russia's officials viewed such enlargement as a potential military threat and a violation of their security interests. Burns warned that pursuing NATO membership for Ukraine could lead to an internal divisions, violence, or even civil war, potentially compelling Russia to intervene. This is February of 2008. Right now we're what? November of 2024.
All right, so in just that little segment, he kind of gives a backstory. The video is very long. It's about 20 minutes. But this is a major channel openly talking about that, hey, Russia has been asking, please no more expansion, please no more expansion. And I'm only going to bring that up because Tucker Carlson being in Russia kind of opened the door for people to speak about this freely. If you're into that kind of stuff, you can watch those type of videos. They're going to be linked down below. The full interview is down below. And as always, please leave all your opinions in the comment section. It is a forum, and it's unfortunate that Russia is now in a hybrid war with the United States. But if we all get lucky, Donald Trump will play the game right and fair, and we will restore a little bit of friendship amongst the countries. Bye, guys.